Just so we're clear, this is a mock draft that is based on what I would do if I were the GM of every team and not what I think will happen. So, with that said, let's get started. At number one, I think it's a pretty obvious decision for the Bears to go with Caleb Williams. With no Justin Fields, there's really no argument against going quarterback. I don't think there was much of an argument against going quarterback to begin with, but especially without Fields. I think Williams is pretty clearly the best quarterback in this class because Chris Sims is even of the opinion that Caleb Williams is number one, and his evaluations of quarterbacks are usually pretty out there. So if he even thinks it, I think that shows you it's pretty clear because most people are also of that opinion. And with him, it's just, he has everything you would need. He has the athletic profile, he's fast, he's got a good arm. He also can extend plays at a very high level. It's sort of reminiscent of Patrick Mahomes in that regard. I'm not saying he's going to be as good as Mahomes, but it's a similar deal. At number two, we diverge a little bit from the public consensus and go with Drake May. I think there's a tier gap between Caleb Williams and Drake May, but then I think there's another tier gap between Drake May and the next quarterback that will be selected, to be mysterious and not say who it is. May has great athleticism, and he also has a very, very good arm as well. And he's a little bit erratic with his accuracy. Sometimes balls get away from him, and it's just not as precise as you would hope. But he is really good at attacking the middle of the field in particular, which is somewhat of a lost art because a lot of these more mobile, smaller quarterbacks generally don't attack the middle of the field very well. May would be the number one pick in most years' draft for clarity. He is exceptional. At number three, I'm a little bit less spicy, and I go with Jaden Daniels. It's going to be a trade with the Vikings that involves number 11, 23, 108, and a future third for number 3 from the Patriots. So 2 first, a fourth, and a future third. That's roughly in line with the Jimmy Johnson trade chart. So the value is about appropriate for the Patriots. And with the Vikings, they're getting a really good dual threat quarterback that has a good arm and is developing as a thrower, which is really enticing because he was very exciting this past year as his real breakout season in college. So if this is his breakout year, there's a chance he's going to keep getting better and better. And he's already very good. So that is really exciting to see. At number 4, we have the Cardinals getting a generational receiver in Marvin Harrison Jr. That franchise guy is a great watch on YouTube, and he says that he is the best wide receiver he's scouted since 2016. So Marvin Harrison Jr. has got some serious praise there. That is really, I would say, verifiably the correct statement as well, because there is just absolutely no holes in Harrison's game. He's 6'4". He's not overly slender. He's a little bit on the lighter side, but he's not a stick figure. And he moves like somebody that's maybe 6 foot. He moves very well for his size. He's a great route runner, has great hands. He knows where to sit in zones. He knows how to beat man coverage. He's great at everything. For the Chargers at number 5, they are in super good luck as they get Malik Nabers. He is the most explosive wide receiver in this class, and he is great after the catch. That franchise guy, going back to him, says that Nabers is actually the second best wide receiver he's scouted since 2016. So there is a ton of talent at the wide receiver position in this class. Nabers is just being really overshadowed by Marvin Harrison Jr.'s greatness because Nabers himself is a fantastic player as well. He's more exciting than Harrison Jr. from the standpoint that he's just a little bit more juiced up. Harrison would test well, but Nabers actually did test very well. And he is super exciting to watch with the ball in his hands. He's like a bigger Odell Beckham Jr. in some senses. So he is a great player. At number 6, the Giants are also pretty lucky as they get Rome Odunze. Odunze is a very steady wide receiver that has good hands and is a crafty route runner. He also has deep speed, So he's not just a kind of boring wide receiver. He has some excitement to his game as well. He's a wide receiver one, potentially, that would really help the Giants a lot because he would get everybody in the right position for where they should be, with Slayton then being a number two, where he's better slotted than he is as a number one, and everybody else would just fall into place. You don't have to have Waller being your best threat as well. You have him being your second option overall. And this would really help with evaluating Daniel Jones to see if he is the right guy or not. I think he isn't, but at least now you'll know. At number 7, we have the Titans getting something they desperately need in an offensive tackle. Joe Alt was a tight end, and that really shows as he has great movement skills in space as a run blocker, but he's also very good in pass protection as well. He's just very smooth overall in his game. He matches the defensive lineman he's aligned against very well. He just never seems out of control, and that is really good praise for an offensive lineman, especially a tackle that's going to be going against super freak athletes on the edge. And he has the highlight plays as well. He might not finish guys like a Mike McGlinchey has from Notre Dame in years past, but he'll let you know he's there in the run game as well. So he's no pushover. At number 8, I'm going to get away from the consensus a little bit again, as most people would have Dallas Turner going to the Falcons, but I instead have Quinyon Mitchell, who I'm higher on than I am for Dallas Turner. Mitchell is a great athlete. He's 6'1" and has 4.3 speed. He is a super freak athlete, and he's really good in off-man coverage. He'll follow number 1 wide receivers around, and he'll just erase them from the entire game most of the time. And just merely following around the number 1 receiver is so valuable because it makes everybody else's job easier. But he's doing it again at a very high level. And yes, he played at Toledo where he wasn't going against the greatest competition, but still he has the athletic profile to be able to do this at a higher level. At number 9, we have the Bears taking Dallas Turner. Speaking of him, just recently, he is a great athlete with all the tools to be a fantastic edge rusher in the upcoming years. And he also has a decent floor because he's pretty solid now, even with very limited moves. He has basically the moves mastered, I would say, that he knows, but he just doesn't really have counters to them at the current junction. He is liable to try a move, and if it doesn't work, just kind of try to push forward and get after the quarterback with raw strength or raw speed. If that move fails, which a lot of the times he can do that, but at the next level in the NFL, you're not going to be able to just win with athleticism as much. You're going to need counter plans, but he has the athletic profile you want to bet on. At number 10, I have the Jets taking Brock Bowers. Bowers is a game-changing tight end that's definitely worthy of a top 5 pick just based on his talent, but he slides a little bit because tight end / slot receiver, which is what he's going to be playing the bulk of, is just not quite as valuable of a position as some others in the NFL. But referring to him as a player, he has great speed for the position. He is ridiculous after the catch. When I say ridiculous, I mean he's one of the best run after catch tight ends in history. He's a good run blocker for his size, but there also kind of lies an issue if he's playing inline tight end. He can be pushed around a little bit just because he's not the biggest. But as a slot receiver, he's going to be a great blocker, and I think that's where he's going to spend most of his time. After trading back with the Vikings at 11, I have the Patriots taking J.J. McCarthy, who is really athletic to the tune of being projected to run a 4.6 40, which is really good for a quarterback. He has a great arm, and in a limited sample size has been a very good passer, particularly over the middle, where he's just a surgeon. He does definitely have his warts. He is still rather raw and needs to be molded into being a great quarterback, but the tools are definitely there. And really, to get a high upside quarterback at number 11 is a great deal. The only reason he falls all the way there is because I am a little bit worried about the fact that he hasn't produced too much over college. But even still, you got to take a swing on him eventually. Here at 12, I have the Broncos going for Terrion Arnold, who is possibly the best cornerback in this class. He has pass breakups for days, which really shows that he does have good ball skills. In addition to that, he's also produced very nicely in the slot, which is great to have the versatility to be outside or inside, especially in the modern era with great wide receivers being in the slot a lot of the time. He is super physical and tackles at a very high level. So there is a lot to like about him. And the pairing of him with Patrick Surtain, or Surtain, I don't remember how to pronounce it, to be completely honest, is a very nice pairing that is young and will only continue to get better for the years to come. So I like this pairing for Denver quite a bit. At number 13, I have the Raiders selecting Cooper DeJean, who is a good athlete, has good size as well, and is just a safe, reliable pick. He has very good instincts that pair nicely with his athletic ability, and he just overall is very refined for the position. And when I say position, I mean any defensive back position. He can be an outside corner, he can play in the slot, he could be a safety. That's very nice because, again, there are so many good receivers that play in the slot. And again, there's also a lot that play outside. So he can match up anywhere and give the receiver a run for their money. And for the Raiders, he is really needed because Jacorian Bennett ranked 124 out of 127 corners. So DeJean should be a starter day one. At 13, I have Talise Fuaga going to the Saints. Fuaga could be one of the best run blockers in the league, particularly in a power run system. He can be beaten a little bit with speed, but is overall a solid pass blocker as well. But his strength really is his strength, to put it bluntly. He is an absolute mauler in the run game. He loves to finish blocks, so he's kind of reminiscent of a guard, more so than a tackle in some ways. But he definitely has the requisite skills to be an offensive tackle. And I think he should start day one for the Saints because Trevor Penning has been really rough so far, ranking 65 out of 81 tackles in PFF grade. So I think Fuaga should stand a chance to be a starter day one. And if Penning gets his act together, they could both start and Ramchick could be moved on from. At 15 for the Colts, I have them selecting Byron Murphy II. Murphy is a great athlete that plays with fantastic leverage, in large part due to the fact that he's only 6'1", and he has short arms, but is great against the run and the pass. He has a lot of juice as a pass rusher. He is a little bit on the lighter side, so he can be pushed around a little bit in the run game because he is only 310 pounds. But if you're asking him to only take on one block, he's really going to hold his own, and he's going to be able to shoot gaps more often than not as well. I like him to the Colts because it makes DeForest Buckner become expendable in 2026, which is really around the corner at this point. So it allows them to get cheaper down the road. If you end up paying Richardson, that's really valuable. At 16, I have the Seahawks taking Troy Fontenot, who has long enough arms to be an offensive tackle. He has 34-inch arms, which is the requisite amount for an offensive tackle for the NFL for the most part. Fontenot could be an offensive tackle then for Abraham Lucas if he has continued struggles as he did in year 2, or if he goes back to his rookie form, then Fontenot could be a right guard or a center, which the Seahawks desperately need, either of those positions filled. Fontenot is a great athlete that will excel in zone blocking schemes, and he's a great pass protector that could be one of the best interior pass blockers in the entire league. So he really has a lot of upside associated with him. I think he's a great player. For the Jags at 17, I have them taking Latu. He has unreal technical skill. He has some of the best hand usage you'll ever see for a college prospect, and he has legit moves. He could be described as somebody that has a very high floor, but has a low ceiling. But I think his ceiling is still relatively high just because of how technically gifted he is. He's a little bit stiff, and what's really worrisome about him is the fact he was medically forced to retire from football a few years ago because of a neck injury. But when he plays, he is an excellent edge rusher, and he could be the best edge rusher in this class. He does offer a lot less athleticism than Dallas Turner does, but he is so much more refined than Turner is at the current moment. At 18, I have the Bengals getting something they desperately need in an interior defensive lineman in Johnny Newton. Newton is a little bit undersized as he's only 295 pounds, and he lacks some arm length, which hurts him when he's trying to get in to the chest of an offensive lineman. But he is a great pass rusher with natural leverage because, again, he's only about 6'2 as well. And he's a solid run defender that can shoot gaps fairly nicely. He doesn't hold up super well one on one engaged in blocks or when he's being double teamed, but he can shoot gaps at a rather high level because he does have good acceleration, and he's also just rather aware of the situation at hand. So I think he's very nice. He offers something that the Bengals desperately need. At 19, the Rams get exactly what they need with Jared Verse, who is an edge rusher first and foremost. But secondly, he's super strong, has very good hand placement and punch power, and is really explosive. He does lack some arm length and is a bit stiff, but he added 40 pounds of basically just muscle in 1 year. So it's reasonable to think he can continue to get even more swole. And that is just a terrifying thought because he already has just so much power to his game and is really technically sound too. So he is just a massive issue for offensive tackles as it stands now. And there's reason to think he can continue to get better. And the Rams really need any edge rushing talent they can get. At 20, the Steelers get who was once considered the best offensive tackle, at least according to some in this class, Olu Fushanu. He is a very good pass protector, and he struggled a bit against Ohio State's power rushers, but in general, in pass blocking, he is great. He's also solid as a run blocker. That's not really his forte, but he's all right in both gap and zone schemes, which is nice because a lot of offenses are combining the two into one offense. So he's very versatile in that regard, and is again just really going to make his money by pass protecting anyways. The Steelers need wide receiver as well desperately, but Fashanu was the best player available. And with Dan Moore really struggling this past year, it's unknown on if the left tackle situation is figured out or not. At 21, I have the Dolphins taking J.C. Latham, who is more than capable of being an offensive tackle. So he could fill in for Teron Armstead if he gets hurt, or if he retires or is moved on from by the Dolphins due to cap reasons. Or for the time being, Latham could be the left guard and replace Liam Eichenberg, who has really struggled in his career so far. Latham is huge. He's 6'6", 335, so he is just an absolutely massive human. And as you would expect, he's a mauler in the run game. He doesn't have the greatest movement skills, but for his size, he's very good. And he's actually at his best in zone blocking schemes, which is great for the Dolphins because they run zone. And that really shows that he does move around fairly nicely for his size. So I think he's a really good fit. The board fell very nicely for the Eagles, as at 22, Nate Wiggins is still available. He has really good size, he has long arms, and has good speed. At the moment, he's not very refined, but he was good in man and zone in college, so that's at least the building blocks of having success in the pros. He really struggles against the run because he's very slender, and he can also struggle with bigger wide receivers as well as a result of that. But overall, he is a very interesting prospect because he is both a project and pretty well established at the same time. He's not very refined in the fundamentals necessarily, but he just is naturally talented and is somebody you would like to bet on because his athletic profile is exceptional. Next, we have the Patriots again picking from the Vikings trade. At 23, I have them selecting Brian Thomas Jr. Thomas Jr. is a very freakish athlete as well. He's 6'3", has great deep speed, good hands. He was a 9.97 relative athletic score, which is out of 10. So out of 3,063 wide receivers from 1987 to 2024 that were tested, he was also 10th out of all of those as well. So that should tell you just how athletic he really is. He's also got the potential to be a number one outside receiver. So he's really good value here at 22 for the Patriots. Next at 24, I have the Cowboys getting their deep threat of the future, hopefully, in Adonai Mitchell. He's very smooth in his movement skills, and at the moment, he's really just a jump ball wide receiver for the most part. He doesn't have the sharpest routes, so that kind of forces him into being more of a contested catch type of player. But again, he moves very smoothly for his size, especially. He's 6'4" and really has good speed as well. So he should be able to be more refined in his route running as he progresses as a player. And really, at the moment, he fills what the Cowboys need exactly because they need some speed at receiver and they need somebody that can be a contested catch guy. He checks both of those boxes and then some. So I think he makes a lot of sense for the Cowboys in particular here. For the Packers at 25, I have them selecting Graham Barton. He's an intelligent, versatile offensive lineman, which the Packers like. They like the versatility of offensive linemen above almost all else. He currently is projected to be more of a guard slash center than he is a tackle because he has 32 and 7/8 inch arms, which is below the 34-inch threshold. But in a pinch, he could be an offensive tackle should the need arise. But I think the Packers have two good tackles at the current moment. And really, what he would be doing is replacing the current right guard, which is a bit of a disaster for the Packers right now. I believe his PFF grade was like a 40, which is just atrocious. So he could definitely start day one. At 26, I have the Bucks being frisky and selecting Michael Penix, which is definitely a move that's going to be divisive because I'm sure there are some Mayfield fans out there that are just going to be appalled with this. But I personally do not believe in Baker Mayfield. I think he's about an average quarterback, and I think you're not going to win any Super Bowls with an average quarterback. Penix has tremendous upside. He drives the ball incredibly well. He has great accuracy and timing deep downfield. He currently has poor pocket presence, but the Buccaneers actually have a pretty good offensive line, so that should be mitigated a bit. They certainly have the tackles between Tristan Wirfs and Luke Goedeke. So I think Penix makes a lot of sense here, and they can get rid of Mayfield within the next year or two without any real repercussions. For the Cardinals at 27, I have them selecting Amarius Mims. Mims played very few games, but he has great size and super quick feet for his size. He's pretty refined too for not playing very much, but as a whole, he's still very much a developmental prospect. I do not care that the Cardinals signed Jonah Jackson, or Jonah Williams rather, to a contract. I think that Williams is pretty well below average, and I think that you need to do better than that for Kyler Murray. So what better to do than have a very high upside projection in Mims and possibly have the offensive tackles of the future because Paris Johnson was also just selected. So you could have really good tackle play moving forward. At 28, I have the Bills taking Troy Franklin. He is ultra explosive. He can stretch the field with speed, his release, his footwork, basically any which way. At the moment, he's not very refined as he's ran very limited routes, mainly just vertical threat routes. But what is more valuable in the modern NFL than being a deep threat? So at least he has that going for him. And I think he really fits a need with the Bills because right now Matt Collins is slated to play, and Khalil Shakir is also projected to be an outside receiver. So Franklin, I think, could be a true outside receiver for them and give them a deep threat presence that they don't currently really have for the Bills. So I think he makes a lot of sense as a fit. If you thought my last QB take was out there, this one is completely off the rails even more. And I'm just going to lay it on you. At number 29, I have the Lions selecting Bo Nix. This is the last year for Jared Goff, and Nix has good tools. I would say he's both more athletic and has a better arm than Jared Goff. He also plays on time like Goff does, so it's a pretty similar transition there. It's hard to evaluate Nix because a lot of his work was done at the line of scrimmage, but overall he was still very good. The reason I like Nix to Detroit is because it resets the quarterback time frame, as it gives them a cheap option at the position, which allows you to keep all your star players more than likely. And I don't think there's much of a downgrade because I think Nix should come in pretty pro ready. For the Ravens at 30, I have them selecting Ladd McConkey. He's a great separator that gets open very quickly. He'll likely be a slot, but he has the speed and release to be an outside receiver. He just is not quite what you would project for a jump ball type of outside receiver. So he's a little bit lacking in that regard, but basically nothing else. And if he does end up being a slot receiver, that's fine. You have Zay Flowers to be an outside receiver. You can have McConkey in the slot. And really, between watching McConkey and Andrews and Likely over the short to intermediate part of the field, that is just going to be so devastating for defenses. And that really gives the Ravens a passing threat, which they kind of lack now because it's pretty much just Zay Flowers as a receiver. For the Niners at 31, I have them selecting Kool-Aid McKinstry, the guy with the coolest name in all of football, perhaps. He has good size. He's lacking a little bit of speed, but he has very good instincts that should mitigate the speed issue a bit. He's primed to be a starter currently. He's really, really good in zone and pretty good in man as well. He's super physical. He uses his size to his advantage, like you would hope to see, and is really a overall nice project, or prospect rather. He's not too much of a project. He should come in pretty ready, as I said, and I think he could be a starter for the 49ers day one. And if nothing else, he gives them versatility moving forward as well, which is always nice to have. For the reigning Super Bowl champions, Kansas City Chiefs, I have them selecting Tyler Guyton. He moves like a tight end. He is just absolutely great as an athlete for his size, which is also very good. I believe he's about 6'7". He's not very refined at the moment, though, which is something to watch out for because it is hard to really teach an offensive lineman basically everything at the pro level, but he has all of the building blocks to be an absolute monster of a lineman. And really, Kansas City needs at least one offensive tackle, perhaps even two, because Jawan Taylor really struggled this year with penalties, especially, and just was not really living up to the contract he has. So Guyton could be a left or right tackle of the future. Thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed for more content.